Yeah, hello everyone. Is my voice audible, guys? So in last session, we were discussing about the first module, and we discussed HTTP module of Node.js. And in that, we have learned how to create a file or folder. We have seen how to access the content of the file, rename file. We have seen how to remove file or directory. All these things we have seen in that FS module. And when it comes to HTTP module, here we have seen what is HTTP server, what is HTTP request, what is HTTP response, and how to create server using HTTP module we have seen. So HTTP module is the core module of Node.js, using which we can create HTTP server and we can send HTTP request and HTTP response. And we have seen how to create using that HTTP module. So there is another way how we can create HTTP server. There is one more way to create HTTP server and manage HTTP request and response. So there is one more way to create HTTP server and manage HTTP request and response. And that is using your Express package. Using Express package. So using Express.js package, we can create HTTP server. We can manage HTTP request and in HTTP response in much more better and easier way. So when it comes to real time, no one will use directly inbuilt modules. They will take the help of Express.js to create your HTTP server or manage HTTP request and HTTP response. One more benefit with this Express.js is it is easy to create REST API with Express.js compared to plain Node.js. Compared to plain Node.js, it is much more easier to create and manage REST API with Express.js compared to Node.js. So when we target for creating the REST APIs, where we want to use HTTP server and manage request and response, in that case, Express.js plays very crucial role. So Express.js makes our life much more easier, and it helps us to manage those REST APIs in much more better way. So how to create our HTTP server with Express? Let's try to understand how to create HTTP server using Express.js. So if you want to create HTTP server using Express.js, the first step what we have to do is we have to install Express.js package. So install the Express.js package. We can call here install or download. Express.js package. So to install or download Express.js package, we have to use the command that is npm install express. The moment we use this command, this Express.js package will be downloaded in our folder. So here I will open one empty folder in my VS Code. I don't have anything in this folder right now. I will create one file here, something called app.js. This is simple JavaScript file. Now in this file, I want to write some code to create HTTP server. In this file, I want to write some code to create HTTP server. Now this HTTP server we can create using HTTP module of Node.js, which we have seen in last session, or else you can use Express package. Now using Express package, it is very easy, very easy to create HTTP server. So for this, first we have to install this Express package. First we have to download this Express package. So for that, you have to open your terminal. So here on the top, you click on these three dots, select terminal option, click on new terminal. Now here terminal will open. Now here we have to use this command, npm install express. So here I am using the command npm install express. Press on enter button. The moment you press on enter button, now here you will see that node_modules folder is created and two files are created, package.json file and package-log.json file. So if I open this package.json file, in this file, you will find here one property called dependencies, which is present in one object. And in that dependencies property, one object is assigned, and in that object, you will find here express. So basically, it provides you the information of your package that you have installed. So it is saying that you have installed Express package and the version of Express package is 5.1.0. And where this package is kept, this package is downloaded in your system and it is kept inside the node_modules folder. So node_modules folder is created. In that folder, you will find here Express package. This is the Express package, which is downloaded. But apart from Express package, you will see here lot of packages. We are seeing the list of lot of packages. Now, all these packages, whatever you are seeing here, all these are the dependent of Express package. All these packages are dependent of Express packages. Dependency means you have installed Express package. Internally, this Express package might be dependent on some XYZ package. It is dependent on some X package, Y package, Z package. So what this npm did, it downloaded that XYZ package also. Now again, this X package might be internally dependent on some other package. Maybe it is dependent on X1, X2. Y might be dependent on Y1, Y2. Z might be dependent on Z1, Z2. So it installed those packages also. So X is dependent on X1, maybe X2. Y is dependent on Y1, maybe Y2. In the same way, Z might be dependent on Z1, Z2. Again, further X1 is dependent on some other package. X2 might be dependent on some other package. Like this, you can have a very long chain of dependency. So to install or to work with Express, we have to download all these packages. So all these packages are taken care by npm and it downloaded and it kept everything in the node_modules folder. That is why you are finding here list of so many packages. And all these packages information you will find in package-log.json file. So here we have package-log.json file. Here you will find the information of all the packages. For example, here if I search for Express, now and in node modules, Express package is present. This is the version of Express package. This Express package is downloaded from this site. This is the internal ID of that Express package. And if you see Express package internally dependent on this many packages. So your Express package is dependent on accepts body parser. Like this, there are list of so many packages on which our Express is dependent. And to work with Express, your node version should be greater than 18. If you want to work with Express 5th version, then you should have node version which should be greater than 18 or equals to 18. Now, if I search for here accepts, if I search for this accepts package, now see, here we got node modules accept. Again, further accept is dependent on this many two packages. Again, if you search MIME type, now MIME type is here. It is not dependent on any package. So like this, there is interdependency on different packages. There is interdependency on different packages. So all that information you will find in package-log.json. But as a developer, we will never go through this file because this is not maintained by us. This is maintained by your Node.js. So we don't even do any kind of changes in this package. Just if you need the information of any XYZ package, which is dependent on which package, if you want to have a look, then you can go through this file. Now, if you observe, this file contains almost 900 lines of code. So almost here right now it is 830, almost 838 lines of code you have. If you install one more package, again, these lines will increase. That is the reason we never go through this file. This is like a package management file. All the information of your packages which are present in node_modules folder present here. Package.json, this is the main dependency which we have installed. That information present here. But exactly where this package is kept under node_modules folder. Now we will work on this app.js file. Now in this file, I want to create the server. I want to create HTTP server using Express package. So to create HTTP server with Express package, first we will import Express package here. So we can use require and here we can import Express package. So when you are trying to import Express package, it returns one function to us. It returns one function to us. That is Express function. Now you can call this function. If you call this function, it returns one object to us. And that object we can hold in one variable. Now these are the rules given by Express people. So we have to follow that. They are saying that when you import Express package, it returns one function to us. Now, if you call that function, it returns one object to you. And now using this object, we can call one function called listen. That's it. Our work is to call just listen function. The moment you call this listen function, internally it creates server and it starts the server. This line internally creates a server. It creates a HTTP server and runs that HTTP server. It runs the HTTP server. So here, no need to call any function log create server, pass one callback function. No need of doing all those things. Just we have to call app.listen. That's it. So Express provides easier way for us to create this server. Now this listen function will take two arguments. The first argument is your port number. Here we have to pass our port number. So here I will define one variable and in that I will define a port. Const port equals to, I'm saying here 3000. And second argument will be one callback function. And inside this, we can write some console.log. And here I'm adding a message, server started on this port number. So if you observe here, I just imported express package. This line we call initialized express package. Generally, we say it as a initializing express package. It provides us one object called app. And using that object, we are calling a function called listen. That's it. The moment you call app.listen, it creates HTTP server internally and runs that HTTP server on this port number. Now you can open your terminal. So I will open that terminal in the command prompt. So here I have opened that terminal. Now here simply we have to run the command node space app. If you say node space app and run, you will see that your server is started. And here it is waiting. The cursor is waiting. Now we can send the request to the server using the URL called http://localhost:3000. This is the standard URL we are going to use for every server that we create with Express.js using any port number. So depending upon port number, we have to add here. So if you add here port number 5000, we have to add here 5000. But this is the standard base URL to send a request to any HTTP server. Now, once we create our HTTP server and once we run our HTTP server, next step what we have to do is we have to create endpoints. So next step what we have to do is we have to create endpoints. Create endpoints. Now, what is this endpoint? Endpoint is nothing but you can consider it is a unit at server to manage certain action. Endpoint. What is endpoint? Basically, we can consider it is a small unit at server to manage a specific action. If you want to manage any specific action at server, we have to create one unit called endpoint. We have to create a unit called endpoint. We can create 4 types of endpoint. We can create 4 types of endpoint. And those are, the first one is get endpoint. Second one is post endpoint. Third one is put endpoint. Fourth one is delete endpoint. So we can create 4 types of endpoint. Now to create this endpoint, our Express.js is going to provide us some predefined function. For example, if you want to create get endpoint, so here I will add. If you want to create a get endpoint, what you can do, you can take the help of this app object. So I will say here, create get endpoint. So to create get endpoint, we have to use this app object and we have to call a function called get. That's it. This is how we create get endpoint. We have to just call app.get. Now this is called get endpoint. Now this get endpoint will take 2 arguments. It can take more than 2 arguments, but minimum it will take 2 arguments. The first argument is endpoint path. We are going to define here endpoint path, or we say it as a resource path. So the first argument should be string, and here the value we have to start with slash, and here we have to add some name for our resource, some name for our path. So right now I am just adding here get endpoint. So like this, we have to define one path. This is called route path. We call this as a route path. This is the first argument. Second argument should be one callback function. And this callback function will take two parameters. The first parameter is request. Second parameter is response. Now from our client, we can send the request to this endpoint. If you want to send the request to this endpoint, we have to use this base URL. We have to use this base URL. And after this port number, we have to pass this route path. This route path we have to add in the URL. So if you send the request with this URL, then this function will execute. So from your client using this URL, we can send the request. So request will come to this endpoint, and this function, this callback function will execute. In the same way, if you want to create post endpoint, if you want to create post endpoint, then function should be app.post. And here I am adding post endpoint. And here also path will change to post endpoint. So whenever you send the request with this URL, this callback function will execute. So the difference between this endpoint and this endpoint is, first of all, method type, your request type. It is get request. This is post request. Whenever you send the request with this URL, this callback function will be called. If you send the request with this URL, this callback function will be called. Similar to this, we can create put and delete. So if you want to create put endpoint, you have to just call here put. And this is your put endpoint. And here it should be put. If you want to create delete endpoint, then here delete. So this is how we are going to create our 4 types of endpoints. So create endpoints. Now endpoints will manage the request coming from client. Endpoints will manage request coming from client. There are four types of request which we send from client to server. There are totally 4 types of endpoint, 4 types of request which we can send from client to server. And those requests are get request, post request, put request, and delete request. We can send 4 types of request from our client to server. And these 4 types of request are handled using these 4 endpoints. They are handled using these 4 endpoints. So from client, if you are sending get request, then that get request will be handled by get endpoint. If you are sending post request, it will be handled by post endpoint. If you are sending put request, it will be handled by put endpoint. If you are sending delete request, it will be handled by delete endpoint. So now if you have here like this client, if this is the client, and here if you have server, if you have server, now from this client to this server, we can send the request. From this client to this server, we can send the request. Now, whatever request we are sending from the client to server, this request we can divide into 4 types. This request is divided into 4 types. So type 1, like this type 2, we have type 3, we have type 4. So the first type we are going to call as a GET request. Second, we are going to call as a POST request. Third, we are going to call as a PUT request. Fourth, we are going to call as a DELETE request. So these are the 4 types of requests we can do to the server. And these 4 types of requests are handled at server using 4 endpoints. Those are handled using 4 endpoints. So here you can create like this 4 endpoints. Endpoint 1, endpoint 2, I can have like this endpoint 3, and I can have endpoint 4. So get endpoint, post endpoint, put endpoint, delete endpoint. These are the 4 types of endpoints we can create at our server. Get, post, put, and delete. So this is your get endpoint. This is your post endpoint. This is your put endpoint. This is your delete endpoint. So 4 types of request you can manage using 4 endpoints. So what is the meaning of managing? Suppose if you are sending GET request, then this callback function will be called. And inside this callback function, whatever logic you will write, that logic will execute. If you send POST request, this callback function will be called. In this function, whatever logic you will write, that logic will execute. If you send PUT request, this callback function will execute. Whatever logic you will write, that logic executes. If you send delete request, this callback function will be called. And here, whatever logic you will write, that logic will execute. So when to send POST request, when to send put request, when to send GET request, when to send delete request, that part also we will discuss step by step. So here, first we learned how we can create server. This is how we can create server. And run the server. And once server is created, then from our client, we can send 4 types of request. And to handle these 4 types of request, we have to create 4 endpoints. And how to create these 4 endpoints, that is what we have seen. I can have same type of endpoints multiple times. Now I can have multiple get endpoint. I can have multiple post endpoint. But every endpoint route path should be unique. For every get endpoint or post endpoint or any endpoint, this route path should be unique. We cannot repeat same route path for 2 endpoints. For every endpoint in your application, route path should be route path should be different. It should be unique. So we call it as a route path. We call it as a route handler. And this entire thing is called endpoint. This is endpoint 1. This is endpoint 2. This is endpoint 3. This is endpoint 4. So here I will just take the screenshot of one endpoint. This entire thing is called endpoint. So this entire thing is called endpoint. In that, this part is called route path. This part, the first argument. So starting with slash till here. So this part we are going to call as a route path. This part is called route path. This function is called this callback function. This function we are going to call as a route handler.
That same route path we need to use in front end, right?
Same routes.
That route path we need to use in front end.
That will come. Don't worry about it. Okay. So this is route path. This is route handler. And this entire thing is called endpoint. And collection of endpoint. Collection of endpoint. Collection of endpoints is called REST API. Collection of endpoints is called REST API. So one REST API can have multiple endpoints. They can have multiple endpoints. So now here I have totally 4 endpoints. This is one endpoint. This is one more endpoint. This is one more endpoint. This is one more endpoint. And collection of all these endpoints is called REST API. It is called REST API. So this is one REST API. We won't call it as a 4 APIs. This is not one API. This is not one API. So these are endpoints. And all these endpoints are called REST API. So all the endpoints which are running on same port number, running on same server, are considered as a part of same REST API. So here we just created one REST API. So your application can have only one REST API, or your application can have multiple REST APIs. Multiple REST APIs means every API will have separate HTTP server and they will run on different port number. So depending upon your applications, you can design one REST API or you can design multiple REST APIs. Multiple REST APIs. So this point you need to be clear. Endpoints and REST API. The difference between endpoint and REST API. So here this is called endpoint. So endpoint consists of route path. It consists of route handler. And collection of like this multiple endpoints in your application is called REST API. So here I have created one REST API which contains 4 endpoints right now. Get endpoint, post endpoint, put endpoint, delete endpoint. Now here I can, in this application only, I can create one more file, something called alternate app.js. I can have one more JS file. Now in that file, I can just copy this code and I can add here. And this, for this particular file, the port number, I will make it 5000. So wherever I am using 3000, I will make it 5000. So things are same. We have imported express, we have initialized express, but here we have port number 5000, and here we are creating different endpoints. Now for this, the URL will be HTTP localhost 5000. And for app.js, the URL is HTTP localhost 3000. Now here I have created two REST APIs. One API is running on port number 3000, and that API has 4 endpoints. I have one more file. Here I have created one more REST API. That REST API is running on port number 5000, and this API also has 4 endpoints. Now here see, in this app.get endpoint, I am writing some code. So I am using this response parameter. This response parameter will be object type. And in this object, there is one function called send. There is a function called send. Now using this send function, we can send HTTP response. Whenever a request will come to this endpoint, it is sending some response. So here I am adding a response called, it is from alternate app. Now same code I will write in this also. But here I will say it is from app. Now if you want to send the request to this endpoint, for that, first you have to start your server. So I will stop my server, I will restart it. Now I have started the server of first API. Like this, I want to start the server of second API also. So I will copy this path. I will open the new tab. I will first navigate to that path. And here I will say, node space alternate app. So alternate app only, right? Our file name. Yeah. Now here see, server started on port number 5000. Here server started on port number 3000. Now I can open my browser. Now I can send the request. Now if I am using HTTP :/localhost, and here if I say 3000 / get -endpoint, now here I will get the response. I got it is from app. Now same URL I will use in new tab, but this time I will pass here 5000. I got here, it is from alternate app. So like this, your application, your one application can have multiple REST APIs. You can have single REST API. Every REST API will have multiple endpoints. So here, this is one endpoint. This is one REST API. This is one more REST API. How you will differentiate REST APIs? Your REST APIs will run on different port numbers, and they will have different HTTP server. So this is the HTTP server created for alternate app. And in app also, we have one more HTTP server, which is created using a port number 3000. So this server is different. This server is different. So depending upon your application, now company will decide whether you should have only single REST API or you should have multiple REST API. Now this creating like this multiple REST API is a part of microservices architecture. So basically what we have done now, we have created one backend application. In this backend application, we created two REST APIs. This is REST API 1, and we have one more REST API 2. And both the REST APIs has multiple endpoints. So it has endpoint 1 like this, it has endpoint 2, It can have thousands of endpoints. Now this REST API also have one endpoint and it has one more endpoint. Now this is your backend application. Single backend application, but multiple APIs, REST APIs. It is running on 5000 and it is running on 3000. Now you can create two different front-end application. You can create here React application. You can create here Angular application. You can have different front-end applications. You can create Angular application. Now here you can have two different databases. Maybe this is MongoDB database. You can have maybe Oracle database. You might have here Oracle database. Now this React application might be sending the request to this first APIs. Maybe it can be this endpoint, or React application can send the request to this endpoint. Now this endpoint might be connecting with this database. This endpoint might be connecting with this database. In the same way, your Angular application, this Angular application might be sending the request to this endpoint. And this endpoint might be connecting with this database. This Angular application can send to request to this API endpoint. This endpoint might be connecting with this database. This Angular application, if required, it can send the request to this endpoint also. Now it is connecting with this database. This React application can send the request to this endpoint also. So now you have single backend application, but multiple REST APIs. And here you have multiple databases. You have multiple front-end application. Now this architecture we call as a microservices architecture. Now here you might have created endpoints to handle products data of e-commerce application. This REST API might be handling users data. So this is might be something handled by management. This might be handled by clients. Suppose if there is any issue with this database, suppose something went wrong and this database is shut down. So database is not working. If this database is not working, it will affect this endpoint. It will affect this endpoint. But here this database is working. So this database problem won't affect here. So this part will be working. Maybe your one feature is not working. User's feature is not working, but product's feature will work. That is the best part of having microservices architecture. But if you try to build everything in one application only, if you try to build everything in one API only, and if there is any problem with one database, then it will affect your entire system. So here, every API is behaving like a single unit. Even one unit fails, another unit will be running. So this is why microservices architecture became very popular in the market. If you want, you can have one more backend application. That backend application you might have created with Spring Boot. And in that also you created some endpoints. Now your Angular application is talking with your Spring Boot REST APIs. Now this REST API you can build with Node.js. This is built with Node.js. Maybe you are creating one more backend application, which is managing maybe payment things, and that API you might have created with Java. Yes, that is also possible. Now your React application can work with the REST APIs which are created with Node.js. Your React application can work with the REST APIs which are created by Java also. So what companies will do, they will divide their business requirement into modules. They will say that my application will have user module, my application will have product module, my application will have payment module, my application will have orders module. Now users module and payment module, maybe I will develop with Node and Express.js. So APIs for user module and payment module, I want to develop with Node.js. So I can hire 2-3 developers and I can ask them to create APIs for user module and payment module using Node.js and Express.js. Now they will work on users and payment module. I can hire some other developers who are Java background and I can ask them to develop products module. So API for products. So maybe I will ask them to use Spring Boot. Maybe I can hire some other developer who is working on Django and I can ask him to develop orders API using Django. So in this process, the benefit is the development of all these modules will start parallelly and all are handled by different developers. So my development speed will be very, very fast. Now I am choosing like these different technologies, maybe because of my business requirement. Now, whatever functionality I need for user and payment, maybe Node.js is giving me more support. So I am choosing Node.js. Now for my requirement to develop product APIs, maybe Spring Boot is more suitable. So I'm using Spring Boot. Maybe for orders, Django is more supportable. So I'm using Django. So if I want like this, I can use different technologies to manage my modules, or else I can use only Node.js to create APIs for all this. That completely depend upon how I am architecting my application. I can have single front-end application that is only React or Angular, or for payment, for managing users, products, I want to use React. For managing payments and orders, I want to use Angular. That is also possible. I can have single database or I can divide my data into multiple databases. Depends upon how much data I am storing, how much my database is capable. So there are different parameters which are completely what we say decided by the people who are at architect level. So as a fresher or as a having 3 years of experience or 5 years of experience, you will never decide for your application how many database should be there, how many backend applications you have to create, how many REST APIs you have to create, how many front-end applications should be, which technology you should use. All these things are not decided by a fresher, not decided by a person who is having 3 years of experience, not decided by a person who is having 5 or 7 years of experience. All these things are decided by the person who is having more than 10 plus years of experience and who is software architect in the company, who has plenty of experience, who built plenty of like multiple applications in his career, or the person who is designated with software architect. His job is to decide all this. His job is to decide only, okay, for our backend, we should have 3 REST APIs. Every REST API should have 10 endpoints, or another REST API should have 5 endpoints. For this, we will use Node.js. For this, we will use Spring Boot. So like this, he will build the architect. Then that software architect will explain all this to manager. Now manager will assign this work to leads. Now this REST API will be managed by one manager. This REST API might be managed by another manager, or there can be only one manager. He will allocate this part to one team lead. he will allocate this part to another team lead. So it depends totally on at what level your application is building. Then that team lead will have its own senior developer. He will have its own junior developer. Now he will decide which developer should develop which endpoint. Now junior might develop get endpoint, senior might develop delete and post endpoint. So like this work will be distributed. So this entire architecture we call as a microservices architecture. So many people get confused with what is endpoint, what is REST API. So remember, REST APIs are nothing but collection of endpoints. Collection of endpoints. So multiple endpoints which are running on same port number, same server, they are said to be a part of same REST API. Multiple endpoints which are running on same port number, same server, they are said to be part of same REST API. Then what is the difference between REST API and API? So basically, REST API is one of the API type. Your API is divided into multiple types. API has different types. In that, REST API is one of the type. So we have REST API, we have SOAP API, we have GraphQL. Like this, there are different types of APIs present in the market. We have REST API, we have SOAP API, we have GraphQL API. Like this, there are nearly 4-5 types. In that, we are going to learn HTTP, we are going to learn REST APIs. So APIs which will follow the rules of HTTP. APIs which will follow the rules of HTTP. Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So any APIs which are going to follow the HTTP rules, those APIs are called REST APIs. So there are some principles which we have to follow while designing a API. And if you follow REST principles, then those are called REST APIs. What are those principles? We will discuss. There are 4 to 5 principles which we have to remember while designing the API. If your API is following all those principles, all those rules, then your API is called REST API. So SOAP API is outdated, guys. No one uses SOAP API right now. So during the year 2010, 12, 11, at that time, SOAP APIs were very popular. But after 2013 or 15, REST APIs became popular. Few people will use GraphQL APIs also. So there is a slight difference between REST API and GraphQL API. But most popular APIs right now in the world is REST API. In our project batch, we are going to use REST APIs. We will not use GraphQL API or SOAP API. We won't develop those APIs also. We will just develop REST API. We will develop one REST API for our chat application. We will develop one REST API for our food ordering application. And in those API, we will develop lot of endpoints. We will develop nearly 10 to 15 endpoints. So for chat application, it will have its own endpoints. For food ordering, it will have its own endpoints. So in tomorrow's session, so tomorrow we will have the session, guys, at our regular time, that is 7:30 p.m. So next session will be tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. So we will learn how to create these endpoints now, how to work with these endpoints. So remember, today we have just seen how to use Express.js, how to create HTTP server. We have understood about what are endpoints, how to create them, and we have seen what are the request types. And we got here understanding of microservices architecture. These are the things what we have discussed. Now in tomorrow's session, we will proceed further and we will create more endpoints. We will see how get endpoint works, how post endpoint works, how put endpoint works. What is the purpose of get endpoint, when we should create get endpoint? What is the purpose of post endpoint, when to create post endpoint? What is the purpose of put endpoint, when to create put endpoint? What is the purpose of delete endpoint, when to create delete endpoint? That part we will discuss so that you can decide depending upon requirement, you should create get, post, put, or delete. Which endpoint you should be creating based on requirement, you should be able to decide. That is what we are going to discuss in next session. Yeah, so that's all guys from my end. If you have any doubts, you guys can ask. If you don't have any doubts, yeah, you guys can leave. I will upload this video and I will share with you. And the code of today's class also I will share. So you guys can access the code and you can practice it.